Hello and welcome to another Bodgit and Leggit video. Today we are doing rear wheel bearings on a 2004 Ford Fusion. Now, how do you know when a wheel bearing's gone? You hear a loud kind of a rumble noise in your car. The faster you go, the louder it gets. But what you have to be careful of is, just because you maybe think it's coming from the front, it might not be. In this car it sounds like it's coming from the front, but it's actually the rear ones. And the easiest way to tell is jack it up and spin it. Hopefully that's coming through on camera. It's really rough, and it shouldn't be rough. And that's the humming you hear. So once you jack up the car, if you hear that humming, then you know which wheel bearing is gone. So we're going to whip off this wheel and get to the bearing. Right, so we've got the wheel off, and it's a very simple bearing. Little bearing and a little circlip. Really easy to put on, but hard to take off. Now, I might have found the culprit here. I don't know if you can see the little plate is bent, and that could allow water to get in, which would destroy your bearing fairly quickly. On some kits you do actually get a new one of these covers, but we don't get one with this particular car. So I'm just going to have to straighten that cover up. It's not a big deal, we're just going to have to remember to do it. So I'm just going to actually use that just to get this off for the minute. And when you take out the centre nut, it's a 30mm nut. And there's the nut, but the little washer should have come out with it. So there's a washer here, if we can get this out, which is actually part of this. It just slots into there and holds it together. Now, this is where we could have problems. Trying to take this off, we could have a couple of problems. The problem is, it's most probably seized on the inner shaft in here, which makes it hard to get out. But not only that, we could the brake shoes could be holding us as well. So we could have two things holding us. If the brake shoes are holding, you can slacken the handbrake off to release the brake cables, and that's how you'd kind of do that. But if there's a lip on the inner hub, well then you kind of screw whichever way you do it. One of the easiest things to do first is just give it a few belts with the hammer. You can see all the brake dust and everything coming out. This should hopefully free anything out. Now, there's a chance when you do this, it might just pop out, and if it does, great. But there's a chance it might not. You can just wobble it. And this one isn't going anywhere. But it's always a good thing just to kind of hit it with the hammer first. Now, one of the easiest ways I found of taking this off, I made a little tool, very, very simple. As you can see, it's just a metal plate with the nut welded on and two slots cut out. And basically what it does is, and I've rounded the nut through it, I've rounded the top of it off so it slits into the actual stub here. So all I do is screw out the middle until it's flat. And then just get two of the car's bolts. This is why I've cut the slots so they're adjustable depending on the car, because some car studs are further away than others. And you don't have to do this tight, I'm just putting these in by hand. Just put them in a few threads just to kind of hold them. This one just happens to be an M12 line, Cosworth head bolt, I have you know. And all I'm going to do is screw that in, put pressure on the bearing. Now you don't want to put a lot of pressure. As you can see, this bar is now bending. So just put a little bit of pressure on it, then get your hammer. And just go around like that, and with the pressure you've got on it and the hammer hitting it at the same time, should hopefully pop it. Now sometimes they can be a bit of a nightmare, so I'm just going to put a bit more pressure on that and just kind of leave it there for a few minutes just to let the pressure hold on. I'm going to leave it there for 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes, turn the camera back on and give it a few more hits. Now I think we've actually got it. What I had to do is I had to take this plate back off and put a couple of washers as spacers just here, so that means it stopped this from bending as much and I could put a bit more pressure on it. This one was the worst of the two, but hopefully now I think it's out, so we can literally now just... Now when you're doing this, you do need to be careful. You do need to look in the gap to make sure you're not pulling your shoes with you. If you're pulling your shoes with you could break all the clips and break the shoes, so you still have to be careful. But you just keep putting pressure on it, hitting it with a hammer, putting pressure on it, hitting it with a hammer. Eventually it will kind of come out. There we go. Now the problem we had here, there was a big lip on this hub, so that was hitting and getting caught on the shoes. But it's out, and that's all that matters. So all I've done is I take this off, you can just see the washers I've just put in place as spacers, and they helped a lot. Now we're going to come to the press, but before we actually press out the bearing, we'll do a little... There's a little circlip in here we just need to take out first. So we've got a circlip pliers, push them together. As we can see, we've got a circlip. Be very careful of these, because these have a habit of spitting off, and they spit off into your face. No matter where your face is, these goes towards it. So now that's off, we can flip this around. Line everything up, make sure it's nice and straight. Got a 32mm socket. I'm going to line up in the middle of my hub. And then just pump the press. Make sure everything's nice and square. And you might have to do a few pumps and you'll hear like a big crack. And there's the crack. So we now know we release the bearing. Put my hand underneath it just to catch it. And there we go. One old cruddy, hope you can hear that noise, bearing out. Now what we need to do, flip it round. We need to check for damage in here, make sure there's no big lines, there's no ridges, there's no nothing. If it's nice and smooth, which it is. Some people do say put sandpaper and stuff in it. I personally don't, because you just wire it in the hole. I just check to make sure there's no lips, there's no rough edges, which there isn't. Lube it up then. Bearing in, make sure it's nice and straight. Lube that up. Right, this is the key now. You need to make sure the bearing is straight before you start. Because if you start at an angle, all you're going to do is damage the bearing. And also, I'm going to put the socket in the centre. You don't want to put the socket in this rubber bit here, because you'll just damage the bearing. I'm going to put it in this centre metal bit where I won't damage the bearing as it's going in. So you get close to it, then you line it up. Make sure your socket is lined up, everything is straight, which it is, and then you press. You'll feel it kind of stop. Like now, it stopped. 2 pumps, give it a few seconds, and then release. Get the new circlip, you might as well use it, it's the new one. Again, be careful, it's easier to grab these and squeeze them before you put them in. But just be careful because they do pop out. This one doesn't want to go in. There we go. Now, make sure there's a little lip that circlip sits into. And you have to make sure it's in that lip properly because otherwise it will spring out on you. Now ready to put it back. Now's a good time, once you've got everything off, just to double check everything, make sure your brake pads or your brake shoes are fine, there's no leaks in your cylinders. It's a little bit skinny up here, but nothing really major to worry about, everything is fine, there's no leaks there, it's nice and clean. We're going to shove on the bearing now. I wouldn't really spray WD-40 on this because it could soak down and get into your shoes, you don't really want to do that. Spray it into the bearing. I've sprayed WD-40 into the bearing. Now this, you do have to be careful, you have to make sure this gets lined up properly. Just give it a couple of little light taps. Nice even taps all the way around, I'm not doing it hard. Just the weight of the hammer really. Now when you get halfway through the bearing you have to be careful, and what I mean by that is halfway through the bearing there's a split in it. I don't know if the camera's showing that, and if you keep pushing that in you're going to push this centre bit out, which can then damage your bearing, so it won't particularly last as long as it should. So once you get close enough so you can put the nut back on, because what the nut will do, the nut will stop the centre part of the bearing coming out. So what I like to do is I like to screw the bearing on with the nut now, because I know it's going to go nice and straight and it's not going to pull that centre part out, and it's going to push everything in nice and evenly. Now this is going in really nice and easy. If you were struggling and you was really putting a lot of pressure on this, I would suggest you stop because something's getting caught. But if it's as easy as what this is, then you're okay to keep going. Right, we're kind of getting there now, it's close. Just give it a good spin to make sure it's not doing that ruffling noise, which it isn't anymore. So that's good. So we just need to keep going until it's fully tight. And give it, there is there is a torque setting on these, but you don't really, I'm going to get the torque please after me again, but you kind of get the feel. If you want to check up the torque settings, you're more than welcome, use a torque wrench, but I'm kind of used to the pressure that I need to put on them. Now, perfect. But what I am going to do, as you can see the big kind of chunk taken out of this cap, I'm going to straighten that back up before I put it back in. Now, so I've straightened that out and just put this back. Maybe push it out a bit too far, but it doesn't matter. Kind of a nice tight fit. Now it's not perfect, but it's a million times better than what it was. So what I need to do now is put the wheel back on and make sure, drive down the road, there's no more noise, but I can be pretty, well, I know for a fact that there'll be no more noise. So that's it, so that's how to put a bearing on the back. So if it helps, thumbs up and subscribe, and don't forget, get your hands dirty. See you for the next one.